Welcome to another edition of What Saith the Scriptures. And this is Harley Howard again, welcoming you to our verse-by-verse study of God's Word. And although we are in the book of Isaiah, we're going to take just a slight break and piggyback the morning message in the book of Revelation. And we're going to continue for the next week or so, maybe two, maybe more, to look at the fact that God is not finished with the Jews. And the reason why that's important, and that's Romans 11, is because at the end of all the calamity and the tribulation period, there's going to be a restored, saved remnant of Jews that will occupy the city of Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem more particularly, and everyone that is left of all the calamities that will be taking place around the world will come and worship in Jerusalem. So the idea that God is finished with the Jew, well, let me just be very kind, is stupid. That's what it is. It's moronic, it's stupid, it's non-biblical, there's no Bible for it. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of people that constantly pour out this ignorance. And I'm even more sick and tired of the people that keep believing it when the Bible that you claim to know says the exact opposite. Now, sooner or later, we're going to have to realize that a lot of people claim to know the Bible not only don't know the Bible, but don't want to know it. And that in their hearts, they really have a lot of angst against Jewish people. They could say whatever they want, but a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment is in the hearts of many, many people and in many a so-called church and a lot of teachers. I've been listening to people for a very long time, and I could tell you that much of what they're teaching, it not only excludes the Jews, but ignores the Jews. And that's really telling, because without them, we wouldn't have a gospel, as we saw, and we're going to be reminded in a few moments again that Paul said that, and Jesus said it, and frankly, everybody else said it. And it's just sad today that much of what is called evangelism is not only non-biblical, but it's American fortified, as it were. It's based upon Americans, what we think, what we do, etc. And it has nothing to do with the Bible. And listen, I may not be heard now. Maybe a handful, maybe 5 or 10 people at the most might listen to this, and maybe 2 of them will believe it. But maybe down the road, many years later, somebody will pick this up and go, you know what? He's been saying a lot of stuff for years, like he does in Luke, on radio right now, and those sermons are 15 years old, and it sounds like yesterday. Because truth is timeless. And if you ever ignore the person that is actually doing the speaking and listen to what's being said, you might actually learn something. Unlike the package it comes in. So what? Is it true or not? Is it biblical or not? Back to Romans 11. And I'm not going to do a whole bunch of review because I don't think it's necessary. I have the sermon from last week up on the YouTube page. All you got to do is go after this. And if you want to know it, it's there. And if you want to share it, you can. If you don't, that's fine too. But we're going to just start at reading verse 9, and we're going to stop at verse 17, and then we're going to continue at that point. I might do a little review, but not much. And David said, or saith, let their table be made a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a recompense unto them. Let their eyes be darkened that they may not see, and bow down their back alway. So Paul is summarizing the blindness of the Jews, that God blinded those that would not believe, made it so that they could not believe. And someone looking at or listening or reading what Paul wrote in chapters 9 and 10 would conclude, obviously, God is finished with the Jews. And the fact is, I believe the first verse says, God forbid. Has God cast away his people whom he foreknew? God forbid. Paul makes the case that that be true, he would have cast away me, and he began to tell us his lineage and everything. So no, God has not cast away his people whom he foreknew. And how anyone could read that and then come to a conclusion that God has cast away his people, or stupid, ignorant replacement theology, it's more than just not knowing the facts. It's a denial of the facts. This is the thing that we need to stop tolerating people's stupidity and act like they're innocent. They're not innocent. They can read it. They're denying what the Bible actually says. I say then, verse 11, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. Okay, so the answer is no. God forbid. May the thought never come to pass that you would think that Israel has stumbled or tripped up to the place where they have fallen away from salvation. No, not at all. Rather, their fall, or through their fall, salvation is coming to the Gentiles for to provoke them, the Jews, to jealousy. If the fall of them be the riches of the world, and diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness. And what I like about Paul, and he just goes, who can know the mind of the Lord or be his instructor? He is in awe of the plan of God. He looks at God's plan and goes, who has known the mind of the Lord? It just blows him away how he sees what God is doing. Verse 12, now if the fall then be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more there, the Jews' fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, and magnify mine office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, the Jews, and might save some of them. You think, wow, even though you have nationally the professed people of God, the Jews have rejected their Messiah, killed their Messiah, killed the prophets, killed the apostles. I mean, just over and over and over again, rejected everything. You would think God is done with them. No, not at all. You say, I don't understand it. There's a lot of things you don't understand. A lot of things you don't understand. And at this point, let me see. Yeah, I want you to listen carefully to this quote. I said it in my sermons in Alabama, I think almost every night. We must approach the eternal decrees of God by faith and with the ready admission of our own limits. We must approach it with an open mind, seeking and searching for the teaching of the Scriptures. We must come to it with a childlike spirit, ready to receive what is revealed to us and ready not to ask questions beyond the revelation of the Scriptures. Faith is a readiness to submit yourself to the biblical limits. Faith is a readiness not to ask questions about things which are not revealed in the Scriptures. And this is our problem. We see things that are beyond comprehension. And Paul at the end says, who can know the mind of the Lord? He's basically saying it's beyond his comprehension. We see these things, start questioning what God is doing instead of looking at what he's doing, going like, wow, God is amazing. Nope, we don't do that. It's almost like we're hostile to God, in the sense we are by nature. For if the casting away of them, verse 15, them being the Jews, be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be, Jews again, but life from the dead? For if the first fruit is holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches, not all, did you notice that? If some of the branches were broken off, and you being a wild olive tree were grafted in, or graft in among them, and with them partakers of the root and fatness of the olive tree. That's important because Gentiles had no root. They had no olive tree. They had nothing. We had zero. Paul in Ephesians mentioned we were without God in the world at all. There's nothing in Gentile history that we could look back and go, yeah, Jews had it and so did we. No, we had nothing. We're enemies of God, hostile to God, without hope. Without hope. Paul said we were without hope. And he says, if some branches, not all of them, and you being a wild olive tree, you weren't by nature part of the branches and the root of the olive tree, which was Israel's. You weren't. None of us were. No Gentile was. And you being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakers of the root and the fatness of the olive tree. So again, the Gentiles did not have salvation apart from the Jews. And though some of the nation of Israel was cut off forever from saving grace and salvation, the Gentiles, who by nature are not the first fruits or natural branches, but were and let me say this, I can assure you more Gentiles were lost than Jews. There's no question about that. If you think Gentiles are running up and down trying to be saved, you're nuts. You're only kidding yourself. We weren't at all by nature first fruits or natural branches. We were engrafted with those Jews who were saved and were part of the natural branches, became participants or joint partners with the saved Jews in salvation. Gentiles participated in the root and fatness of the olive tree, which is salvation and spiritual life of believing Jews. And he says, boast not against the branches. Okay. Don't boast against the Jews. Don't glory in the Jews, the sum of the branches that were broken off. Don't be boasting against that. But if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. You do not support the root. What is the root? Well, the patriarchs of Israel, of saved Israel. The root supports you. You don't have any salvation apart from the Jews. Salvation is of the Jews through them, according to Jesus' own word in John 4:22. The origin of salvation, where action or motion proceeds from, the place or time of the cause, salvation for the Samaritans, Gentiles, and the world came by way of the Jewish nation. We have no salvation apart from the Jews because the gospel was preached to us through them. So there's no cause of any boasting. None against the Jews. We owe them a great debt. As I said last time, it doesn't mean that they're going to heaven because they're Jews. Not at all. That's ridiculous thinking. Or that they don't need to be evangelized like the fool Hagee says, and others of that ilk. According to Paul, we are to proclaim Christ to them, in fact, to the whole world, if they are lost in spite of the benefits that came our way through those Jews who love the Lord. So we're not to exclude them at all in our preaching and teaching. Verse 19, thou wilt say then the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. See that arrogance that Paul talks about. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. See, it was only because of unbelief that the Jews were cut off, and that the believing Gentiles stand only by faith. And this raises an interesting point about the conflicts that were apparent because of the rejection of salvation by the Jews and the embracing of it by the Gentiles. And Jews didn't care for that. Even though they rejected it, some Jews were quite angry at Gentiles being saved, which we see in the book of Acts quite a bit. But there's a danger of pride, which stems from a person offered salvation. And it's not that salvation produces pride, but that people think themselves to be better than others. Well, the Jews rejected it, so, it was they rejected it, and it was my opportunity. Might have been something about me. No, it wasn't. No, it's not you. The Jews had a problem with pride in their religion. Gentiles have the same problem. which produces the testability to all Gentiles, even after it was clear that God was saving them through the same gospel. So again, we Gentiles are very ignorant of the hostilities that took place, very much so. Ran deep and long, very much so. Gentiles who have been despised now felt as though they had the upper hand spiritually. That, of course, fostered in some arrogance and attitude of pride, and it was a pride that was completely unwarranted and without merit, because salvation, as Paul clearly stated, was all of grace and not of any merit from anyone ever. So we can't be arrogant about being saved. We can't look at the Jews and go, well, that's just tough. Now we are really blessed. Those Jews, nah, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Gentiles were being saved not because there's anything about the Gentiles. We didn't deserve it either. The Gentiles in their pride and our pride today need to understand that God's not through with the Jews. And it's this wrong attitude that was manifest even in Paul's day that Paul wrote about. And he wouldn't have written about it if it wasn't so. And he wanted to make sure that these Gentiles understood that nothing could be farther from the truth. God was by no means finished with the Jews, and the Gentiles had better not forget that point. Rather than being high-minded or being proud about it, Paul said that they were never to be proud, but they were to be struck with terror, absolute terror. Why? Verse 21. And that concludes your review, which I said I wasn't going to do. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he spare not you. Wow. If God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not you. If God did not spare the Jews nationally, not individually, because of their pride, which led to unbelief against Christ and a continuation of their own non-salvific religion, okay, then perhaps he may not spare you Gentiles either because of your pride, which will lead to the same unbelief. I will make us think that we somehow deserve redemption. And that's the summation of American evangelism. In many ways, we're giving people the impression they deserve a chance. We even mention things like that, similar things. The offer, the chance. The correct terminology is grace, not chance. We don't deserve chances. We receive grace and mercy. There is no obligation of God ever to save anybody. He does it not because anybody deserved it, but because of his own mercy. I will have mercy upon whom I will have mercy, and I will pardon who I will pardon. I'll harden who I'll harden. We need to have the same mindset Paul had. Oh, the riches and the depths of the wisdom of God, how unsearchable are his judgments, his ways past finding out, who are known the mind of the Lord. We need to have that same mindset towards God, to be amazed at the whole work of redemption, rather than going, yeah, I understand what's going on. I think I deserve it. You deserve nothing. Nothing. You deserve judgment. That's what you deserve. This whole attitude of thinking we deserve something manifests in many a so-called church and many individuals claiming to be Christians. And this pride has no business, no place with anyone at any time will be the cause of spiritual blindness from God. And I've seen that too. We don't deserve anything. And yet Gentiles have better understand, number one, God's not finished with the Jews, and God will be finished with you if you think that he is. Ooh, you didn't hear that. That's okay. You'll hear one day. It was that pride that caused the Jews to reject Christ and to choose to produce their own righteousness. The Gentiles needed to be careful for the same reason that they or we would not, in despising the Jews, create their own form of righteousness, which in turn would bring about God's rejection of them as well. And it's interesting because since salvation is of the Jews, and the Jews would be the ones that God would use initially to deliver it to us, Gentiles, get all arrogant and proud because they say, well, some of the branches are broken off. And that's because they were broken off so that I may be grafted in. And they will build a so-called salvation based upon the false notion that they deserve to be put in the roots and the branches and the, to be grafted in. And so their alleged salvation would be, let's just say, anti-Jewish and built upon a Gentile mentality, thinking that we deserve to be saved. I see that stuff all the time. Credible. That's what leads to all this when we're teaching doctrine and teaching truth, and the 4 or 5 people that teach the Bible, the rest of them just ignore the scriptures altogether. They ignore the Old Testament, ignore what the Jews are, ignore everything. And the whole mentality towards the Jews is, man, they were rebellious and stupid and disobedient. Well, yeah, they were that and then some, but not all of them. And remember what Paul said in this chapter, some of the branches were broke off. That still doesn't give us any room for boasting. God's choosing has nothing whatsoever to do with any human or racial or religious merit. In God's choosing, there was not and is not any justification for human pride. Without this understanding, both are in danger of creating a works righteousness, both worthy of rejection from God. And pride still comes before destruction, and there is just no room for pride in Christianity, because both Jews and Gentiles should humble themselves before this great and awesome God and realize that no one deserves salvation in the first place, ever. Their very histories and behaviors, and ours as well, towards God, prove that they didn't care too much about him, and neither did we. Look at this, verse 22. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God. Look at this, the goodness and the severity of God. Wow. On them which fell severity, but towards you goodness, if thou continue in his goodness, otherwise thou also shalt be cut off. Wow. The goodness and the severity of God. I mean, Paul's mind is, in our vernacular, just blown away. How he sees the whole work of redemption with the Jews and the Gentiles. And he says, look at God's kindness and then God's severity. I mean, this is the nature of the impartiality of God in action towards anybody. The goodness of God is seen in that he would offer salvation to anyone, since there is no person who deserves any salvation in the first place. And yet God says, here's my son. But if you don't, here's my severity. Whether you're Jew or Gentile, there's no room for pride because none of you deserve anything. That's why he just keeps writing these things. It just blows his mind. I wish it would blow our minds. Let's look at severity. Because the Gentiles were to observe both characters of God. Severity means to hew cut. What does that mean? To strike forcibly with an axe or sword or other cutting instruments. To chop, to hack. To make shape or to smooth with a cutting blow. It's also described roughness towards someone. And I've used an axe. And I'd say I'd chop stuff down too. Chop trees down. You have to hit that stuff hard. Hew cut. Wow. Any picture of God that is given concerning salvation that eliminates or ignores both elements of God's nature and salvation is absolutely wrong. It's wrong. God will show kindness and he will cut a people off. Both the severity and God's goodness. The goodness and the seriousness of God. Both are in play all the time. Always has been, always will be. And this isn't opinion. This is the truth. Keep in mind that the Lord, if the Lord was sharp with and strict with his chosen people and cut them off, how much sooner will he cut off those who were not as to begin with? We don't think those things. I'm looking at the it may not mean anything. I'm looking at the amount of people that are watching the graph is going crazy because I think people are like, I don't know, I ain't listening to that guy. He's whatever. In fact, someone called me. Don't call me. I'm teaching now. What do you call me for? Besides, leave a message at the beep, because if not, I'm not going to call you back. But why don't you try listening instead of calling? Behold us, therefore, the goodness and severity of God are them which fell severity, but towards you goodness, if you continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou also be cut off. To those who were under judgment fell severity, a hew cut. God just whacked them. He took an axe and whacked them. But to the Gentile, kindness, if, and it's a real big if, you continue in the kindness of God, otherwise you'll also be whacked. Use the same word, cut off, hew cut. God has no pets. He plays no favorites. If Gentiles reject the goodness and kindness of God, we will too receive a hew cut from God. People just don't understand who they're dealing with the true and living God. They don't get it. They don't get it. They don't understand. He's serious. Verse 23, and they also, they Jews, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. You do see that, don't you? This isn't something that we can miss here. If unbelieving Jews will embrace Christ for salvation, God is more than willing and capable to graft them into the blessings of salvation and future hope to come. After all, it was theirs in the first place. This is a God of grace, even in severity. He's not willing that men should perish, but all should repent. Those who come to Christ will be saved. Those who don't repent will experience the wrath of God, the hew cut, without partiality, Jew or Gentile. Verse 24, for thou wert cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature. That's important. Into a good olive tree. How much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Yeah. Whose tree is it? Their own. Not yours, Gentile. You were cut out of a wild olive tree. And you were grafted in contrary to nature. Listen, I've grafted stuff. Obviously, many people have. There's no guarantee when you graft something from one tree to another that that's going to take root. No guarantee. None at all. Gentiles were like a wild olive shoot grafted to a regular cultivated olive tree. Gentiles were indebted to Israel, not Israel to the Gentiles. If Gentiles who were not even part of the olive tree were grafted into the olive tree, how much sooner would those Jews who were by nature part of the olive tree be grafted in if they believe? The Jews who were the natural branches, Gentiles were not. Note how Paul ends verse 24, speaking of the Jews who be grafted into their own olive tree. It's their tree. It's not yours. It's their father's. It's their tree. It's their benefits. It's their covenant. It's their everything. It's their Messiah, their spiritual heritage. We Gentiles had nothing. I think we want to act like it was always ours. Y'all better read this Bible and stop playing. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be, what's the next word? Ignorant of this mystery. What a statement. Ignorant of this mystery. There's almost a play of words there. Ignorant of this mystery. There are a number of times where Paul uses that word mystery in regards to something that really can't be explained what God is doing. Yet he says, you should not be ignorant of this mystery. There's a certain element, like I said, Paul is writing, he's like, this is beyond my comprehension. Telling those Gentiles, don't be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Don't be ignorant of the mystery of God. There are things that you and I cannot understand. Being conceited was a problem with both Jews and Gentiles then as it is today. Many Gentiles are arrogant, not only towards Jews, but even towards other Gentiles, when in fact they and we have absolutely no right nor command to be arrogant about anything at all. We are ignorant of the mysteries of God. Paul writing says, great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh, justified in the spirit, seen of angels, etc. The mystery of godliness. And we see the same thing. Don't be ignorant of the mystery of things that are beyond your comprehension. Don't think because you're so arrogant that you can look upon this any other way than it's a mystery beyond your comprehension. This is amazing. Vain conceit stems from vain wisdom, not from scriptures or salvation. A so-called salvation that produces pride is no salvation at all. What in the world do we have to be proud about, having experienced the grace of God, which no one deserves in the first place? What in the world could we be proud about? Number one, ignorance has to do with Gentiles thinking that they are better than the Jews because the Jews squandered their opportunity for salvation as a nation, and Gentiles have received it. And let me say this, not a lot of Gentiles. I don't want you to get the impression that Gentiles are running all over the place to be saved. That's not true either. God's sovereign plan to put Israel aside temporarily in order to show grace to Gentiles. There's no basis for conceit on the part of Gentiles. It is designed to display further the magnificent grace, mercy, and glory of God to give the people who shouldn't have been saved. We had nothing spiritual. A bunch of good-for-nothing, low-down, dirty, rotten, idol-worshiping, stink-sinner heathens. That's all we were. What do we think we deserve? We deserve a chance. You deserve nothing. You never had. You should see the magnificent grace and mercy and glory of God in even considering us to be his own. Had nothing to do with you. Yet we see all pride-laden people, pride-laden preachers, and pride-laden saints, so-called, and pride-filled churches that they sit and boast about salvation as if they deserved it, rather than falling upon their face and thanking God for his mercy. Number two, ignorance continues with Gentiles thinking that God is finished with the Jews altogether, even in the face of obvious truth that he's not. That's just ignorance. And that's not ignorance of the mystery of God. That's ignorance against the mysteries of God. That's ignorance against the truth of God. All that John Hagee mess is nothing but rooted in pride, nothing but pride. Condemning Israel to damnation by saying, you don't need to evangelize them. They're already a covenant people. Ridiculous. Number three, ignorance continues when we forget that both Gentiles and Jews naturally have rejected God's salvation. There's no Gentile nation that could say, yeah, we were chosen of God. America was never chosen of God. Oh, don't get a stroke. It's not true. Show me. You know, Americans are stupid when it comes to the Bible. Show me here where America was chosen by God to be saved, please, because everyone's saying it. Show me. Show me, show me, show me. The only nation God ever chose was Israel. That's it. That's it. America was founded on Christian principles. Really? How's that working out for us? That would be true of many nations that had the gospel before we existed, if what you're saying is true. And it isn't. We're ignorant to the fact that God will cut off Gentile opportunity to salvation just as quickly, if not quicker, than he did the Jews if we do not respond to God's salvation, the love, the mercy, the kindness of what God has given to us who deserve nothing. If Gentiles do not continue in God's kindness, they also will be hew cut. God will cut us off. This does not suggest that a Christian can lose his salvation. It refers to Gentiles as a whole turning from the gospel, much as Israel as a nation did. Okay, that's exactly what he's saying, because it's definitely not only possible, it's happening. You think the majority of Americans are Christian? You're out of your mind. God, hew cut this country so long ago. It's incredible. This country is hew cut all over. There's axe cuts all over America. Spiritually, we don't even see it. Don't even want to see it, which is another proof. But the most tragic of all, ignorance continues when we ignore the scriptures relative to the future plan that God has for the salvation of the entire nation of Israel. We just read earlier, and all Israel shall be saved. Obviously, that's future. Obviously, it's after the tribulation period, all Israel shall be saved. That remnant that's left will be saved. I love what Robert Haldane said in his commentary. I love it. Absolutely right when he said this. This is so true, and not just the Romans, but everywhere. He says, quoting, "Ignorance of the scriptures is a cause of high-mindedness in Christians. They are often arrogant and contemptuous through want of knowledge." Nice way of saying they're ignorant. Through the necessity of being knowledgeable. In the absence of real knowledge, they often suppose that they have a true understanding of things with which they are still unacquainted and are thus vain and conceited, end of quote. No doubt. No doubt. No question. We don't see the mystery of godliness here. We don't see the mystery of God at all. Paul stated, blindness in part has happened unto Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Israel's national rejection of God's righteousness is only until the fullness of the Gentiles is realized. So what is the fullness of the Gentiles? Until the full number of the Gentiles come into salvation. God is saving from the Gentiles a people for himself. And this is God's plan. And one day when the full numbers of Gentiles are saved, God will turn back to saving the nation of Israel. At that time, God will again resume his divine plan with Israel as a nation, opening up their understanding to their Messiah, which is seen in verses 26 and 27. Oh, didn't I just say this? And so all Israel shall be saved. Let's read that again. And so all Israel shall be saved. In fact, I want to go back and read it with verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. And so all Israel shall be saved. That's future. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant unto them when I shall take away their sin. Oh, that's Old Testament. I forgot you don't read it. That's why he said, so all Israel shall be saved as it is written. He's not saying as I'm writing right now. He's saying this was already written. All of the remnant of Israel in future shall be saved. That's Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 21 through 28. That's the passage that he's quoting from. Oh, did I hear you say you want me to read it? Good. And then we're done. Ezekiel 37. I mean, it's right there. He quoted from it. You know, like any of the preacher I know, that's good. Everybody likes, you got people like a bunch, people like the same cookies, you know. I think probably most people eat chocolate chip cookies. I think that would be the default cookie. Okay. Now, some people, they like semi-sweet chocolate. Some people like milk chocolate. Some people like dark chocolate. But when all's said and done, it's still a chocolate chip cookie. Some people might like pecan, some people like walnuts, but basically, if offered, a snickerdoodle, which is sandpaper, and a chocolate chip cookie, I think the majority of people would probably take a chocolate chip cookie. It's a default cookie. I think a lot of people like their chocolate chip preachers. One preacher might be a little nuttier than the other, but they're all carbon copy of the same thing. Everybody wants to copy from somebody. And the way people rate and judge preachers, if you're not a part of a chocolate chip coalition, well, you must be a snickerdoodle. No, we're just the way God made us. That's all. And it almost bothers people because it's like, I'll never forget what Dennis Worden said as long as I live. He said, Harley, only you could say the things you say. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, if anyone said those things that you would say, we would throw them off the air. And I was looking at him. I'm like, are you saying you get? He said, no. He said, God has you here to say those things what you're saying. He's saying God has his hand on your word because you're saying things that no one else can say. They get thrown off. You realize I don't know how I'm on television. I don't. I have no, the things that I've been talking about for 30 years on television. I guarantee you most people would have been kicked off with a size 30 boot by now. But God has granted mercy and grace through the entirety of what's going on. Because I'm like, every now and then I go, this is it here. I'm going to get booted off. I've been saying that for a long time. And yet, no, it hasn't happened. And God has constantly put people in the right places to give me favor. Because I've been consistent with the truth. He's not favoring this group. He'll talk about a cult and talk about church the same way. He's not a cookie cutter preacher, expecting the people out there. Yeah, he's just like, no, he's not. He's not like anybody. This guy is himself. He's Harley Howard. God made him, and that's it. He ain't going to copy no cookies. He's not a part of the coalition of the chocolate chip coalition where everyone, stuffs their face with their favorite preacher saying the same nonsense. No, he just teaches, and we don't understand how he's number one anyway. We don't understand how. I don't understand. Okay, I don't. This got to be God. Someone's got to be saying something that appealing to somebody like this doesn't make any sense. It's totally contrary to what we've been hearing. Well, maybe we've been hearing the wrong thing. Shut up, Harley. Ezekiel 37, verse 21. And say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone. I will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall no more be two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms, no more Jerusalem or Judah and Israel, no more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places, wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. And David my servant shall be king over them. They all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments, and observe my statutes, and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given them unto Jacob, my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt. And they shall dwell therein, even they and their children, and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forever, or forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them, yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forever. Right there. Right there. Last reference, Isaiah 45, verses 14 through 17. Then I promise we'll be done. Thus saith the Lord, the labor of Egypt, and the merchandise of Ethiopia, and of the Sabaeans, men of stature, shall come over unto thee, and they shall be thine. They shall come after thee. In chains they shall come over, and they shall fall down unto thee. They shall make supplication unto thee, saying, Surely God is in thee, and there is none else, there is no God. Verily thou art a God that hidest thyself, O God of Israel, the Savior. They shall be ashamed and also confounded, all of them. They shall go to confusion together that are makers of idols. But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. There's coming a time. There's coming a time. There's coming a time. One more. Isaiah chapter 59. Verses 19 through 21. And we could do this for months. It's all in the Old Testament. So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. And the Redeemer shall come to Zion, and unto them that turn from transgression in Jacob, saith the Lord. As for me, this is my covenant with them, saith the Lord. My spirit that is upon thee, and my words which I have put in thy mouth, shall not depart out of thy mouth, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, saith the Lord, from henceforth and forever. Over and over and over and over and over again, we see the eternality of the covenant. I mean, God's not finished with Israel. We may think so, but we're wrong. And if we got this attitude against the Jews, well, that needs to end today. We need to be mindful of the fact that God's plan is going to happen. And there's nothing you can do about it. What we should be doing is what Paul said. Oh, the mysteries of God. We should be looking at the mystery of God. His judgments are beyond comprehension. His ways past finding out. Who had known the mind of the Lord that we may instruct him, to him and through him, and are all things. Paul saying, God's ways are beyond my comprehension. Glory to God. That's the same attitude that we Gentiles, after thanking God for our scoundrel behinds being given an opportunity to be saved in the first place. Not because we deserve anything, because we certainly don't. And we need to see that we don't deserve anything. No one has, and no one does. But we in particular, never a people of God. We need to be thanking God every second, but not any arrogance against those who are part of the natural branches, the natural tree, because it's not us. We've been grafted in, not because we deserve it, but because God showed us mercy. So let's stop with the belittling of the Jews. You know, we may not come out and say it, but the attitude is still there. It's in our preaching, it's in our mindset, it's in our so-called evangelism, it's in everything. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. Mm. As usual, hopefully something is said that is going to help you. And I noticed that I think the crowd that left came back. Maybe I entertain people. I don't know. I'm just hoping that they get this stuff because we all need to learn of the wonderful mercies and grace of God. Lord willing, see you folks part of Committed 100. See you tomorrow in Proverbs.